This week's topic is endangered species. So there's lots of animals that you've heard of that are endangered. And so we're going to dive a little deeper into what causes this and then maybe how we can fix it too. So an endangered species is just any species that is at the risk of becoming extinct because it is either few in numbers, threatened by changing environment or predation parameters, deforestation, or lack of food or water. And you might notice that most of these are human caused. Sometimes it can be just natural, out of our hands. But since that's the topic that we're studying for this unit, most of the examples are going to be animals that are endangered because of us. And there's a lot of different international and national agencies, or I guess you could call them companies, that work to maintain a list of endangered species. And they try to protect and preserve them as best they can. So an extinct species is just something that's completely gone from the surface of the earth. So there's none of them left anywhere on the planet, not even in zoos. And so here's a couple. And here are some other ones that are on the verge of becoming extinct. So some of the causes of endangerment we'll cover now. So rarity, inbreeding, gradual loss of habitat, long-term environmental trends, catastrophe, so like natural disasters and stuff like that, competition, predators, disease, hunting and collecting. And so I'm not going to read all of this word for word, so you might need to pause it. This is just kind of like a more detailed rundown of the list that you just saw. So rarity, that's when there are only a couple of the animals left and they're not really able to get their numbers back up because they can't make them repopulate fast enough. Then you've got inbreeding. So if a group is too small, then their genetics will get kind of out of whack and they'll be born with defects or other things that just aren't healthy for them. Gradual loss of habitat. So this is going to be a human caused thing. So if we clear cut forests or build neighborhoods in places, that's going to get rid of habitat and then the animals have nowhere else to go. So probably the only really non-human one is going to be long-term environmental trends. So if there's a increase or decrease in Earth's temperature, that's not something we can really help too much with, and that can cause animal populations to drop. So competition, that's if there's a new species introduced to a habitat and the ones that live there currently can't really just they can't outcompete them. So some common ones for us would be kudzu, which we see a lot in the south. And then next up, you've got predators, disease, and then hunting and collecting. So that might make you ask why we should care or why would we care about these animals? And so we actually get a lot of benefit out of animals and plants out there. They hold medicinal, agricultural, ecological, commercial, and aesthetic or recreational value. So I've got a little bit of info on those too. So medicinal, so actually about 40% of the medicines that you find in a pharmacy come from some kind of natural compound. So they're not man-made. They come from a plant or tree or shrub or bush, or sometimes even animals too. So that's quite a bit. An example is the Pacific yew, and it's just a kind of typical tree you'd find out west, like in the Pacific Northwest. And it turns out that the compounds in its bark are actually usable to get rid of or stop the spread of cancer. So for agriculture, so there's about 80,000 edible plants in the world, and humans typically only rely on about 20 of those. And that also includes animals. So animals are considered part of agriculture. And then the next one is going to be ecological. So plants and animal systems are the foundation of healthy ecosystems. So if you start removing animals from food chains and food webs, it has a ripple effect and it can really kind of bring down like a whole ecosystem. So you can have something like the great coral reefs or the Everglades, or just some other kind of ecosystem just completely just fall apart, if one of those gets moved or goes extinct. And so just to see it as a visual, so if you have like a food web, which is the pyramid down at the bottom there, if you removed something at the bottom, like one of the plants, it's going to have a ripple effect upwards, and it's going to affect the herbivores, and then that could affect the primary predators, and then that could affect the secondary predators. So it's all connected. For commercial, so probably the best example could be fishing and fishermen. So lots of people along coastlines depend on going out and fishing for their job. And so if all of a sudden you have no fish off the coast, then they aren't able to make money and provide for their families. And then as far as recreational, I guess a couple of examples of this could be people that are interested in bird watching or trying to photograph birds. And then you could also think of things like zoos or other tourism based things, like maybe where you're riding a horse or petting an animal or like swimming with a dolphin or something like that. And so the role that humans play in this is pretty big. So right now, species are becoming extinct at a rate of about 100 to 1,000 times faster than they were before humans arrived on the scene. And unfortunately, that rate is expected to get even higher by the end of the century. And it's going to be up to 10,000 times higher than a normal extinction rate. And here's a little bit more data on that. So basically, if you look at the bottom in the blue, the estimate right now is that 1/4 to a half of the world's plants and animal species could become extinct if we don't take action. And the most vulnerable ones are going to be tropical rainforests, coral reefs, wetlands, and estuaries. An estuary is a place where saltwater and freshwater meet together. Okay, and then there's a little bit of difference between these two things. So you have an endangered species, and then you have a threatened species. Your project this week's going to focus on endangered species, but when you're doing your research, you might come across the word threatened sometimes. Okay, and then here's a breakdown of what exactly is kind of threatened and endangered currently. So you can see the plants make up most of it, followed by fish, and then you've got 30% of amphibians are threatened, 28% reptiles, 21% of mammals, and then 12% of birds are threatened to be endangered. Okay, so that concludes your guided notes. And so now you're going to want to do your normal routine and then do your guided notes. And then eventually you're going to pick some kind of an animal. So it could be a plant, it could be a bird, it could be a mammal, just some kind of a living thing that is currently endangered. And you're going to do a little bit of research on it. And then you're going to make a like a video presentation. So probably something on like Screencastify. And I'll give you more details on that in class. Thanks. Bye.